And we are back here once again with another episode of the MSK Show, and this is going to be episode 79. And in this episode of the MSK Show, I'm going to be having a conversation with indie creator Arron Sparrow. Now, you guys probably know him from Thinking Critical's YouTube channel. They do a show on his Patreon, and then Wes will upload clips of it on his YouTube channel, actually. And Aaron's been a long mainstay in the comic book world, actually. He worked at Boom Studios because your friend Jesse told me that. And I have some questions about that because Boom has randomly went through some interesting, positional shifts earlier on this year. And you actually were at one point, have you ever worked with like any other bigger people outside of like Boom or anything?
Boom is probably, I worked with a lot of big companies, like as far as like licenses go, like Disney, DreamWorks, things like that. But it was all for smaller comic book companies that had those licenses.
Okay, gotcha. And we wanted to talk to Arron for a long time, so it's good that we could finally get together. I talked to him on Facebook, and he was like, "My God, a black guy messaging me. He's probably gonna try to get Harris." And I was like,
"No, actually, what's funny is when I started working on Darkwing Duck, I can't remember who it was. Someone told me, they said, you're gonna get a lot of black fans. And I was like, what? And they were like, yeah, like there's a large like community of black fans of Darkwing Duck. And I was like, oh, cool. And so, yeah.
Well, we'll start here since this is your first time on the show. And just in case you ever have a second and third appearance later on, we could just already have this out of the way. How was your life growing up, actually?
It kind of sucked. It was pretty rough. I came from
origin. Life is bad. We're starting there. Okay.
Yeah. I had really good grandparents, but my mom was an absolute mess. And so she left my dad and then like shacked up with a drug dealer. So, I was raised in pretty messed up home for quite a few years until my grandparents finally put their foot down and got us out of there. And then once my mom split from the drug dealer, she actually ended up meeting a really good guy who came in and was a really good stepdad to us. And he and I still have a great relationship to this day. But my mom and I don't talk.
Okay, so just to point this out, your mom was with someone, left your dad for a drug dealer, and then later on left that drug dealer for your stepdad, who you've had in your life since when? Like what? You're like 10 years old, 12 years old?
Since I was probably like 13, 14.
Okay, yeah. You know what's crazy is a lot of women just don't understand this because, like, and I'm not shitting on single moms. I get it can be hard. I get there are some guys out there that are just pieces of shit and they'll just leave their kids and they don't care. What women don't understand is not having a male figure there actually is not good. Even though they sometimes can do a good job. Like when you ask the kids, like, hey, would you have had a dad in your life? Would have it made any difference? They'll be like, no, I don't think so. But then as they get older, they realize that probably would have actually been a good influence to have a male figure there. Because, moms can be kind of soft, like they'll punish you, but they'll kind of give you back your shit like in a few days anyway. That's what I've noticed moms are. Moms are way more softer than dads are most of the time.
Well, that was kind of the great thing is my stepdad came in and he gave us, because I think that kids crave structure. I think that they crave, discipline. I think that they want that. I think they want a parental figure that guides them and directs them. And, studies show that having a mother and a father in the house is better for, for raising children. Who would have thought, the family unit that it's like, worked throughout centuries, turns out to be okay. It turns out to be the ideal situation. But, he came in and my brother and I were basically like feral kids. So, like who knows how we would have ended up, we probably would have been criminals if not for him coming in with his influence.
You guys were like what? Saiyans from like Dragon Ball Z? Like the
we were
Goku was when he got here and he was acting all crazy with his grandpa and he hit his head and he turned normal.
we were definitely running wild, and it's a miracle that my stepdad never put his hands on me or never throttled me because I was asking for it. Like I told him, I said, I can't believe that you never, you didn't just straight up murder me. And he goes, oh, there were times where I was like right there. You got me right there.
Well, so since you love your stepdad a lot, I'm glad he worked out for you because, this situation where it doesn't happen, you would spend Thanksgiving with him coming up like most years, right? With his family and everything.
Yeah, no, I absolutely would. now this he lives up in Washington State now, and I live in California, so we don't see
I
each
do
other for
too.
the holidays.
Oh, really? In
Yeah,
California? Oh,
yeah.
shit. I'm here. Yeah.
Yeah. What are you in? I'm in Southern California. Where are you at?
I'm 2 hours away from LA. I'm like by Redland. I'm like by Orange, not Orange. Yeah, about Orange County, Redlands, kind of like where Frankinsons is at.
I just came from Frankinsons. That's where I was at.
I love that place.
Yeah.
I absolutely love that place. Holy shit.
I didn't know you were a local boy.
I'm actually in Barstow, but we can get out there whenever. It's not that big of a drive. Redland, I love City of Industry. It's just, my God, it's so expensive out there. Holy crap. Good Lord, I couldn't live out there, man. I would be a homeless, broke person pushing a shopping cart. I would legit look like radio out there.
It's a miserable like living. Cost of living is miserable out here. But
you're telling me. Good Lord, I could do it alone. People are like, how you do it alone? I don't know. There was weeks I literally just lived off $20. I'm not even kidding, just to do it. So I know how it is. But also you've been alive for a long time. You were born in the 80s, actually?
No, I was born in the 70s. So I'm
So you
late
you were essentially alive when like Star Wars first dropped. Holy shit.
Yeah, I mean I was really little. Wait, was I? Yeah, no, I was really little. I don't think I actually got to see it until it was like re-released in theaters.
Okay.
I definitely didn't see it on its initial showing. Because I remember my first exposure to Star Wars was getting dragged to the laundromat and doing that thing where you're a kid and you're miserable and you're like you just lay down on the dirty floor and you're like I don't want to be here, and I was looking under the washers and there was a little action figure under there and I was like, what is that? And I went and grabbed it and it was a Jawa. I didn't know what it was at the time, but I was like, what is this thing? And so I held on to it. And then the next time we were like at like the CVS or whatever the hell it was called then, I saw like the Star Wars figures and the Jawa was there. And I was like, oh, what is this thing? And then my uncle's like, you don't know what Star Wars is? And I was like, no. And he goes, it's coming back out. I'm going to take you to see it. So, I was really little, but he took me to see it. And I was blown away. So yeah, I did get to see it, but just not on that initial run.
And you were around in a time period in school, because I'm pretty sure you went to public school. Like people of this day and age, these kids are not going to ever understand. I imagine now it's a little bit more accepted to be like a nerd and talk about things openly. I remember just even when I was going to school, the only thing that was relatively even somewhat culturally accepted was like Dragon Ball Z. If you talked about like Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh, comic books, well, we don't really have that here, but if you did talk about that stuff, you were just considered a nerd. They would like just straight up banish you from hanging in the circles. I imagine it was way worse in your day, because holy crap, in my day was bad. They're just socially outcast. You're not even allowed to be in our presence. You talk about any of that nerd shit. So a lot of things changed.
I was fortunate because my grandmother, I always used to joke that I came from poor white trash, and my grandmother would always go, we're not white trash, and I'd be like, well, not you, Grandma, but Mom is white trash, and she'd be like, okay, but you don't come from white trash. Stop telling people that. So she actually paid for me to go to private school. So for the first part of my life, I was in private school. Okay, and everybody there was kind of into the same stuff. So it wasn't until I went to public school that I really got the culture shock of like, oh, that stuff that you like is not cool. What are you talking about? You're talking about comic books and G.I. Joe and stuff for like, no, that's not cool. But I had like a really weird kind of like upbringing, because I went from going to a school and being like, all of a sudden I'm in public school and I'm a nerd and I'm an outcast. And then jumping over to like, and so the school I was going to was pretty violent. And a kid got stabbed. And so I was like, I'm not doing this. So I started ditching. And ditching school, I ran into the cool kids that were ditching school. And then a bunch of us got sent over to catch up to a continuation school where you could kind of like work at your own pace. And because I was so behind at that point from ditching. And those kids ended up there too. So all of a sudden, like I was in the cool group at that school. So it's just weird to go from like, a school where you just know everybody and there is no cool group. There is no, outcast group. It's just all kids, and everybody's fine with each other, to going to, the social hierarchy of junior high and high school, and then jumping over to another high school where like all of a sudden now you're in the cool group. So I've kind of like seen it from all sides.
After that, did you go to college or anything? Was your stepdad the type of guy that was like, you have to go to college and get this piece of paper to be successful, or you just got a job?
No, because he wasn't he's successful and he wasn't a college educated guy.
Crazy. Isn't that crazy? Yeah. That lie they tell you that you have to go to college to be successful. Yeah, that's a little bullshit.
So like I I went for a few years, working towards my associates, and then like everything kind of like fell apart because that's when my mom like left my stepdad and I got thrown out of the house and I had to get like 2 jobs to get by. And so all of a sudden I was working. So I didn't ever get to finish, but I was only ever like going to community college. I never like transferred to
same here. I take like some community college and I was like, I hate school. I legit hate being here. And I was like, you know what? One day I was like, I just canceled all my classes. They're like, we like you. It's like, I hate being here. School is worthless after like you learning some basic stuff. That's crazy. People talk about women a lot nowadays. Like everyone, it's now cool to talk about how bad women are. Your mom, like you said, had gotten a new guy and he was really good for you guys, but then she left him. Like, what do women want in life? Women, I think people call me misogynist for this. I love being raised by wolves. I love battling in the gladiators. If a guy can come along like your stepdad did and change your life, and a woman can go like, that's not good enough, then what is good enough for a woman? Or do they only just crave drama? Like,
I don't know. My grandfather said this about my mother, and it's kind of true. Is he once told us that woman will walk over anybody, even the corpses of her own children, to get something that she wants. My grandfather said that, and it's like, and we all went,
Lady Death or something?
Yeah. No, she's just I mean, if you like my dime store psychoanalysis, she is just there's just a lot of people that are empty and they're looking for something to fill that up. And they just think that a new person is going to make them happy. They don't understand what, and like, I've kind of gone through the same cycle of like finding those women where, and realizing that it's like, oh, you just think that like, you think that everything is like Hoobastank lyrics and that, this person is going to, this person's going to be the reason that you change who you are, but you're not going to change who you are. You're just going to go through the same pattern again with this person. And then you're going to burn them and just move on to the next thing. And so it's really kind of tragic, the way that people are, but you also can't keep those people in your life, even if you want to help them.
That's what I tell people too. Yeah, even if they're family, even if they're bad for you, it doesn't matter if they're family. They're still a person like anybody else. Just because you have a blood connection to them shouldn't change that. But you would think in a mindset of like how average people do, your family should be there for you. Well, it's actually pretty crazy. A lot of bad things happen in families. It's like there's some statistic that I can't see on YouTube, but you don't want to say. There's a certain person that always does the thing that happens close in the families. There's a lot of bad shit that happens in families, but it's that notion of like they're blood related. So I have to kind of give them a pass. It's like, no, I stopped doing that ages ago and my life drastically improved over that.
Yeah, I mean, you can forgive people and yet still realize that they are poisoned in your life and move away. And that's kind of what I had to do with her. And since then, like, she's fallen out with my brother, she's fallen out with my sister. Nobody, none of the kids talk to her anymore. Because
when was the last time you spoke to her?
Oh, it's been quite a few years. I mean, just I think it was last year, maybe the year before. No, it was last year. My grandmother passed away, and the way that I mean, she was in her 90s. It was not unexpected, but the way that we found out is my mother texted, after not allowing my brother and my sister to go see her without supervision and never having time for them to go see her, she just texted them, "Grandma's dead." That was what they got. And then when my brother was like, this is how you tell me? Like, you send me a text that just says grandma's dead? And her response was, well, she lived a good life. And I didn't even get a text. My sister called me and said, we just got this text from mom saying, that your grandmother's dead, or that, grandma's dead. And I was just like, it's typical. I wasn't even surprised. I was just like, this is typical.
Yeah. It's crazy, man. At some point in life, I wish a lot of people would know this. Things shouldn't surprise you anymore if you're around certain people enough. That's why I stopped getting surprised. I was like, nope, that's just how life is. The most unexpected thing is the most expected thing you're generally gonna end up happening to you. Like, there are some women out there that are just like your mom, where like nothing can make them happy, even if like Jesus himself came back from the dead and was like, here's $1 million. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. People are just empty human beings, and they just crave drama and attention. Well, the next thing I want to ask you is comic books. So everyone knows you're a big comic guy. How did that start? Did you get like Marvel and DC comics as a kid? You see it on a spinner rack? Did you have a comic book shop around you that your parents would buy you comics from?
So we would go up to my great grandparents for the summer, in the summer, and They lived in a trailer, like a mobile home park.
Okay.
And my grandfather was a carpenter, really good carpenter. He and my great grandmother had owned like an automotive shop, like when cars had first started to be put on the road. Like, you know, he when he started dating her, he showed up in a Model T. And my great grandmother's parents didn't want her going with him because he had a car. He was one of those fast boys, you know. So they had a really great relationship, and they were just really great people. So we would go up there and we would spend the summers with them. And one of the neighbor ladies said, "Well, does your grandson like comic books?" And my great grandmother goes, "Well, I know he likes to read, you know, but I don't see him with a lot of comic books." And she goes, "Well, I got this big box of like Archie digests that, you know, I buy and read, and, you know, and I was going to throw them out, but if he wants them, he can have them." So she gave me that, and it had like DC, Sugar and Spike, and, you know, some other things like that in there. And I devoured those. And so I started buying the Archie digests when I would go to the store, and you know, because they were right there by the checkout stand. You know, for those that don't know, comic books used to be really easy to get. You didn't have to go to a comic book store to get them. They were at every grocery store. They were on spinner racks at the drugstore, you know, 7-Eleven, Circle K, whatever it is you had near you. There was these racks that you could go and peruse all the wares. And so I started getting those. And then that was about the time that, and, you know, my grandmother had bought me a few like Star Wars books, you know, here and there, but like never anything consistently. So I never really got into like the stories. But that was about the time that I started buying G.I. Joe toys. Ooh. And then I saw the commercial for the G.I. Joe comic book, because they weren't allowed to advertise toys on TV at the time. So the kind of workaround was, we'll advertise the comic book, but the comic book will show off all of the toys that, you know, all of the characters and all the vehicles that we're selling in stores. And so I started buying the G.I. Joe comic book. And then from there, you know, flipping through it, you see like the X-Men, you see Spider-Man, and, you know, you like Spider-Man because you watch Spider-Man on, you know, the cartoons. So, so I started like getting, like, I got into X-Men, and then I got into Spider-Man, and then I got into, you know, the rest of the Marvel universe. And then that led me to Batman. And then Batman was my entry into the DC universe. So yeah, I just started reading comics all the time. But the first stuff that I was interested in was, you know, I was reading the comic strips in the newspaper. So I was reading like Peanuts, and I really liked Garfield. Like Garfield was like kind of, you know, and then the Garfield and Friends cartoon came out. So it was like, you know, it was all that synergy of things that, you know, you liked.
So Mr. Jimmy Palmiotti, I had him on, I think on my other podcast. I've had many podcasts over the years. Well, that was the reason when I had Jimmy on. He said back in the day, to even have like people notice you had to basically send your artwork into them. Like you would send it to the editor, you mail it to them. Was that actually a thing?
Yeah, because there, you know, you didn't have an instant way to transmit it.
Yeah, I forgot,
you know, there was no internet,
right? So, just upload a file.
Yeah, so you had to draw pages, and then, you know, maybe you photocopied them or whatever, and you mailed them in. You know, I never did any of that because I wasn't trying to be an artist. I mean, I started out drawing, and then my grandmother took me to see you know, she was like, "Oh, there's a comic book artist that's doing a signing, and you know, you can show him your artwork, and, you know, find out how to, you know, what you need to do to progress." And this guy was like so bitter. I don't remember who it was, but he was so bitter. I always remember him like, he wasn't smoking a cigarette, but when I talk about it, it seems like he was. He was just like, you know, comics are, you know, you're not going to make any money, kid. Go be a dentist. And you know, like, and it was like, oh, be an accountant. And
technically now he wasn't wrong. I mean, you can't really make
it was good advice.
Yeah,
it was good
like,
advice. He was looking out for me.
You're like, you got rejected, but it's like, looking back, man, dentists make a lot of money. Accountants make a lot of money if you actually get a job there.
I mean, it's divorced dentists that are keeping the comic book industry afloat right now by buying all those variant covers. So you know, so I got discouraged I stopped drawing. But then when I got older, I realized that I still, you know, so like I wasn't in practice anymore, and I never got better. You know, so I'm good enough to, like, you know, I can doodle like a Darkwing on your book or whatever. I can do a little remark for you, but I can't draw like out a page, or, you know, I can't do any of that stuff. So, but I knew I still wanted to create stories. So as I got older, I was like, well, how do I get into comics on the writing side? Like, how do I, you know, and so I was attending Comic-Con, and then I started working for Comic-Con as one of their staff. And through that, I just met a lot of people. And then a job came up at Tokyo Pop. It was like, you know, Tokyo Pop's hiring for copy editors. And, you know, you've got all this English lit experience. And so I applied for a copy editor position, went in and had the interview with the managing editor, Jill Freshney, who I absolutely adore. I haven't seen her in years, but I hope to run into her at a con soon, because I just absolutely love her. Need to find out what she's up to. But she hired me to be a copy editor. And then from there, I started giving advice on some of the translations. Like, this doesn't make sense, and if you reworded it this way, you know, it would be better. And then they started giving me adaptations to do. And then from there...
You also, I remember you said this on one of Wes's videos. You used to work for Otaku. People don't remember what that was. There was a few like anime publishers out there. There's very few of them where they would print out like anime magazines. Otaku, I used to have them. They were like giant size books for anime back then. Now if you, what's crazy is now if you do that, man, you probably make millions of dollars with it now. They're a little bit too far ahead of the curve then. They're not, I don't think they're around now anymore. But there was another one that was doing it too. It was crazy. Well, what was the experience like? Because I remember those books. They were super in-depth detail with interviews and everything. I imagine translations from you guys were way better back then. Because you know how many mistranslations are now in Viz, everybody? A lot of them. You know?
Oh well, Viz, you know, they've got activists working there, so you know they're reframing the actually one of their I don't know if he's still there, but one of the activists that moved over there is actually a guy that tried to threaten me once, you know, with being blacklisted.
Wait a minute, are you saying that leftists are violent? I thought there was a party of inclusion and diversity and all that stuff.
I'm just saying there's a lot of cliques in the comic book industry, and if you run afoul of them, they'll try to destroy your life.
Heidi McDonald. Sorry. I'm sorry, guys. I'm just coughing, you know.
Yeah, I don't think Heidi's a big fan of mine.
Heather Ontos, my goodness. What that's a
I don't even know, like I don't even know if Heather Ontos knows who I am.
What's crazy about like leftist leaning women is that some of them are like really attractive, but they're actually just mentally deranged. That's what sucks. No, I'm not like Heather's. I don't think she's ugly, but like I wouldn't date a woman like that. That's a lady you see at a bar, you smash, and you leave. Like no contact with that lady. You like she calls you the next day. She's like, "I loved it so much." Yeah, I'm hitting ignore. I don't know who you are.
who are you again? Well, how much did I have to drink?
I must have been drunk when I did that. Sorry. Yeah, I don't actually read IDW books. I choose to read Dark Horse stuff. She'd be like, what?
Yeah, no, I mean, you know, you always hope that that there's room for people to like kind of like change their you know, leopard to change their spots, so to speak. You know, so I always hold out hope that people will kind of like wake up and realize the ways that they've been brainwashed or the ways that they're, you know, they've just like kind of been hardened in these opinions. I try to always be really open with all of my opinions, and you know, I have strong opinions, but if you come and you bring me evidence that I am wrong, if you can make a compelling argument and you can show me information that I don't have, I will absorb that information and I will reassess my position on things. But you know, most people don't have that. Most people like they take it as an affront if they're wrong about anything. But there's so much to know in the world. Like, how could you possibly ever know everything or think that you know everything, or think that your opinion is 100% right on everything? It never needs to be re-examined.
I think what a lot of people did that were like more like right centrist leaning was that they did this thing that a lot of people are stopping doing now, which I love, which is they went with this idea of, hey, let's just put my head in the sand and I'm just going to ignore it and it'll all just go away. Not realizing that that is actually the worst thing you can do. I'm not like a history buff myself, but throughout history, the people that didn't like anything fought for it, like in wars, guys. So the fact that you had all these many legends of people and civilization getting built from fighting wars because they wanted to make sure what they wanted to push as far as like a society, as far as values, they fought for it. A lot of people at some point basically went, no, if I just ignore it, it'll just go away. That's not how life improves. It's not. Like, I don't know where that comes from. Yeah, sometimes, like you said, you're going to have to have you know, hard conversations, whether you agree and disagree, but at least the point of it is just talking, just to talk out your opinions with someone, you know. But enough people went super tribalistic and they went, you know what, I'm going to wash my hands of it. I'm just going to ignore any of this. And then I'm just going to leave. And it's like now, and they're like, well, how did the world end up becoming so bad? No shit. You didn't try to push your opinions out there. You didn't try to change anything. You didn't try to talk about it. That's why these things are so prevalent now. Like, you have constant, just everything going bad. And I was glad with the recent presidential election, as you saw, enough of the world went, you know what, maybe we should stop putting our heads in the sand and saying, we'll ignore it, it'll get better. Because that's not how any society throughout history got the way they did, was just putting your head in the sand and going, I'm going to forget all that happens. We'll just let them sort out. No, you have to be strong. You have to fight for what you believe in. It's how we got this country, actually. It's the American flag is a representation of that, you know?
Yeah, no, it's interesting because, you know, there is always this, you know, I in a way you get it, because it's like everybody's like dealing with their own like personal war. Everybody's like, you know, trying to make ends meet, or they, you know, they have a family, and, you know, so like there's a lot of people that are just kind of like unaware. They see things going on, but they're like, I don't really have time to look into what's happening over there. I assume it'll just all blow over. And then it doesn't blow over. And eventually, like, you have to realize what's going on and you have to take a stand. I realized very early on that the mainstream pros turning on customers and denigrating the customer base was a problem. And so I stood up against it, and as much as I was blacklisted before, got super blacklisted for it. But I didn't care because it was what was right. I've always been on the side of the customer, and I don't care what your politics are. I don't care what your personal beliefs are. I don't care what your sexual preferences are. If you are a customer that buys my book, you have that respect. You have the respect of, I respect you as a customer, and everything else is immaterial to me. And I'm not here to lecture you and tell you how to live your life. Thank you for contributing to what I do so that I can therefore live mine. I'm very appreciative of that. So I started speaking out on that. And because of that, I became, I guess, what's called Comicsgate adjacent. It's like I was never like a Comicsgate guy. I never came out and said like I'm Comicsgate, because I'm not a joiner in that respect. I don't like having to answer for other people. I'll be responsible for what I say. And, if I have friends and they say something that's, I don't need anybody coming to me and going, what do you think of what your boy said? It's like, well, he's an adult, he can defend himself.
And I imagine now recently looking at what's going on in Comicsgate, I'm pretty sure you made the right decision actually looking at it now.
Yeah, because now it's like as near as I can tell, because I don't follow all the drama, but as near as I can tell, it's 100 different splintered factions and everybody sniping at each other and kind of like falling apart. And I'm like, I just want to make books. Yeah. I just want to make good books and sell them to people and have the people read them and enjoy them and entertain people. That's what I got into this for. I didn't get into it for, for waving anybody's flag or kissing anybody's ring. One of the reasons that I wanted to get out of the mainstream was because in the mainstream, you have to kiss somebody's ring to get work. You have to wake up every day and you have to kiss ass and you have to pretend to be something that you're not, or, you have to sell yourself out so that, you're in the right
Or you
clicks.
do what Zachary Levy said before the presidential election came through. He said, basically, you either do what you just said, all that, or you just shut your mouth and don't say anything. That's it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you keep your head down. And a lot of people had to do that to, keep their careers and keep providing for their family. And I don't begrudge that at all, but I also don't really respect it.
It's bills, like having your beliefs doesn't pay your bills, but then again, how much you gonna let that's gonna eat you inside. That's maybe worse than maybe like I guess having a comfortable life. But then again, light bills don't care the fact that you told off your comic book editor. The light bill got to get paid. I understand it.
But when you see the entire industry, your entire livelihood heading towards the iceberg. And you see these people like driving it towards, towards the end of, you're going to lose it all anyway. At that point, you have to draw your sword and you have to say, I'm making a stand here. Or, you just wait it out and what happens to you happens to you. And a lot of people have, experienced that in the industry. A lot of the people who either came out against the customer now no longer have work. Or a lot of people that just kept their heads down no longer have work because the industry has shrunk to a degree that there's not enough work for everybody. So I'm happy to be on the independent scene. I'm not, you notice that I'm not in any fights with any independent creators. I have pretty much have a policy of talking to everybody. And whenever anybody comes and tells me you shouldn't be talking to that person, I just respond, well, what am I supposed to do when someone tells me that I shouldn't be talking to you? Should I just block you? Like, that's not how this works here. I'm going to talk to everybody. And if somebody turns out to be crazy, I'll say, you know what? Yeah, I think you're a little bit crazy. And I'm going to, but
what's crazy is that like, rest in peace his soul, Akira Toriyama, the creator of Dragon Ball, one of the biggest things ever created in a long time, right? Passed away. And the good thing about Akira Toriyama is he never spoke about his politics ever. I don't even know what his politics are. Maybe he is a socialist. Who cares? He always talked about how much he loved the way people loved his products. And it's crazy how people can see his impact on just media in general and go, you know what? I'm going to go create drama and do it the other way. It's like, holy crap. In the same way that you brought up earlier, which is I'm just going to talk about what my products is and what we're having currently going on. Like all this like nonsense fighting just does nothing. It really just honestly makes the people that are wanting to support you or on the fence about supporting you not do it because they don't want to be involved in that,
Yeah, and I see creators out there that are involved in drama all the time. And I see creators that are out there blind iteming people and patting themselves on the back and saying like, well, I'm such a good guy. I've worked really hard. I've done this, I've stayed above the fray. And then you find out that they're involved in all kinds of like shady backroom stuff, and it's like just, or there's the people that are just out there being drama queens constantly, talking about how, oh, I'm so oppressed and I'm so, blacklisted in the industry and I've been treated so poorly. And it's like, well, you've also been a colossal asshole, so like, you can't go and like throw shit over the fence and then not expect that your neighbor's not going to throw it back. That's not how this works. So like, I see like, so I've met, I know you have a Ripaverse hat. I've met Eric July. He could not have
black
been...
man.
I did. It was on Zoom. It was on Zoom, so I was never in any actual danger.
Okay.
No,
he didn't try to rob you. He didn't try to offer you a grape drink. Like what?
Grape drink. Like you know who enjoys grape drink? The Dreadnoks. No, that's the whitest kids bit. It was like, I was on a green screen, so I was never in any actual danger. No, it's like I met Eric July at San Diego Comic-Con, and he could not have been nicer. He could not have been more polite, more warm, more, appreciative of me coming up and talking to him. And so, it's like, oh, okay, I like him personally. And I like what he's done with his company. I mean, I like the fact that he's employed other people, that he's used his success to, to build a business that provides livelihood for other people. And I think that's, people can have their opinion on the quality of the books or, whether or not they like them, art is subjective, everybody has, a million different opinions on that stuff. But, the fact of the matter is he's done more than just enrich himself. He has built something that is sustainable for other people. And I've always come from like a real team-based idea. One of the reasons that I pushed back against the pros denigrating people, the Kelly Sue DeConnick idea of, if you don't like my politics, don't buy my book. So what you're saying is you're bitching about politics is not only more important than the customers, but it's more important than everybody on your team, because you may not need people to buy your books, but who does? The artist, the letterer, the colorist, all the other people that are earning a paycheck off of that book. So you have a responsibility to not alienate the customers, because the customers are paying their bills.
Yeah.
And
that was a clear example of her just looking out for her own best interests, which, as human beings, we're going to do that. But like you just said, on a comic book, people don't understand. Just open the first page. You get the table of contents. There's like, how many different names on there on average? Like what, 20, 15, give or take generally? All those people could be just like getting less money to pay their bills because of what she did. And a lot of people, keep in mind, it's not just her that did it. A lot of other people have been doing this. And then they have these, like there was that thing that came out with the whole comic book summit thing where that one lady's lying to people about the sales and everything. People don't understand the sales are bad. There was a few videos that I watched where basically most people are just buying just to get the covers, or like because the cover looks good. They're not even reading what is inside the books. I myself do read what's inside of them myself, but just recently or misleading Deadpool and Wolverine WW3, which was World War III. There was nothing about a world war in that book. Just completely misleading title. Avengers versus Aliens. #1. I reviewed it on my comic book channel. It has like Iron Man, Cap, and Captain Marvel on there. Iron Man and Captain America aren't even in the book. So I had to question myself, if you are buying these comics, as they all say, they're not buying it because they're reading what's in it. They're buying it because they just like the variant covers or the 1 in 25 that the retailers get if they order a certain amount or whatever, So much disingenuous bullshit these people say every day. And then I'm the bad guy if you call it out. That thing is, for some reason now, it came into a point in life where if you call out bullshit or you just want to say your opinion, then people just go, oh my God, how dare you notice things? You just accept that bullshit. Recent, you saw my tweet about the how to Train Your Dragon thing. I was like, hey, I don't like she got race swapped. I'm sorry, that's bullshit. How dare you? That's racist. I'm not supposed to notice things and call things out? What the? Are we supposed to just literally just be like, actually like robots and just accept what our programming is and just go forward? That's what I think people are. Because, the people that you talk about, all of them back in the day probably were like Rage Against the Machine people. They fight the government. These people are the biggest corporate chills on the planet. There's a reason why people understand this. I've been a YouTuber for a very long time. A lot of people say nice things about those companies to get free stuff from them, to get invites to premieres to movies, to get free review comic books. They're not doing it because they potentially love it. They're doing it because they want to get noticed by the companies. Like all those Star Wars shows you've seen, like Kyle Katarn, that fucking loser, and the Star Wars Explained couple. Those people, they're just industry shills that just suck off anything they give you. And then you're the problem.
It's like I want to get some free. I want to get some free Lego sets. So what do I have to say? What do I have to say to get free? Yeah, to get free Lego sets from Star Wars.
I like Legos. Don't shit on the Legos, man.
There's no. I mean, I absolutely. I do too. But I'm not going to sell out my integrity to get some Lego sets from a company.
I agree.
At the end of the day, when we're on Thinking Critical and we're talking about what we like, what we don't like, you could disagree with us and that's fine. Like I said, art is subjective. We may like a book and you may think that it sucks and we can disagree and that's awesome. That's what comic shop nerd conversations have always been about, is guys arguing about, who can beat who in a fight and what book sucks and what book is great. That's all well and good. But at least at the end of the day, when we give you our opinion, that's our actual opinion. Mm-hmm. We're not trying to suck up to anybody to get anything. We're being honest with you, our audience, because our responsibility is to you, the people that are watching us, not to some company, so that we can get some free comic books.
So there was this controversy you had a long time ago where you were working at Boom Studios. You said on a video with Wes, and they wanted you to basically rush a deadline for something, and you just said you weren't going to do that. I forgot which movie you said you were going to do it for. Oh, it's
it was. No, you're absolutely right. So it was Toy Story, and they had our Toy Story comic book was behind schedule, and so
Toy Story 4 that was coming out at that time.
Yeah, and we brought
doing one of those tie-in comic books, right?
This would have been before 3.
So wow, okay.
Yeah, so our continuity was after 1, but before 2, even though 2 was out, but we were kind of like building towards 2.
Okay.
And to connect the comic. But we knew that once we got to 2, then you have to get past 2, and then that becomes dicier, because then the company, Pixar, is going to be like, you can't do that because we might want to do something there. You can't do that because we might want to do something with that, or with that character. So we knew it was dicier to get to the second one. So I had hired Clint Holinsky to come in and draw one of the issues. And Clint is, he's a guy. He does crowdfunding. He does like Pirate Queen and some other books. And you could have him on. He can tell you the same story from his perspective. But he was brought on, and they were pressuring me. The managing editor was saying, Clint needs to have this book done in 2 weeks. And I said, Clint says he can get it done in 2 weeks, but the quality is going to suffer dramatically. So what's going to happen is he'll draw the book in 2 weeks. It won't be his best. We'll turn it in. Pixar will reject it completely. And now we've wasted all of that time, and we'll have to go back and start again from scratch. So we'll actually lose more time by doing it the way that you're asking me to do it. What if we just bite the bullet, push the book back 2 weeks, say it's going to be 2 weeks late, and we give Clint a full month to draw the book like he needs. Meanwhile, I'll have the next artist drawing the next issue so we can catch up on the back end. By the third issue down the line, we'll be golden. We'll be back on track. No, I want you to, we need to make this deadline and blah, blah, blah. And it was purely just, I think, because the managing editor didn't like, being challenged, didn't like being pushed back on. He was very insecure. I was coming from a publishing background. I was coming from Tokyo Pop. I'd done all this stuff. He was the editor-in-chief in name, because the actual editor-in-chief in title was Mark Waid at the time, but he was at home writing.
What a great guy, right?
Yeah, it was
Turns
just,
out,
yeah. So, but I think he had a problem with me because it's like I had more experience than him. He had just ordered comic books for a comic book store in LA, and that was his experience. And I had actually worked with companies and with licensors and things. So it was a problem. So anyway, it was his way or the highway. So I told Clint, I said, you got to do it in 2 weeks. Clint did it. We turned it in. Pixar said, what the hell is this? We're not approving this book. Yeah, we're not approving this book. And everything happened exactly as I said it would happen. And then when
this was back when Pixar was still ran by John Lasseter, I remember.
Yes, and everybody at Pixar, not that John Lasseter was a tyrant, but John Lasseter was very much about quality and a certain level of quality. And so everybody at Pixar was terrified. John, what if we publish this? And John Lasseter walks into an airport or walks into a liquor store and sees a Toy Story comic book sitting there on the rack and goes, oh, wow, and picks it up and starts flipping through it and sees what we approved. And then we're all fired. That's kind of like the fear. So anyway, we have this meeting and we get on the call. And the person at Boom, I can't remember who it was that said this, but actually said, nobody says to Pixar, nobody cares what's in this effing comic book. And I'm on the line and I just like, my eyes just got wide and I was just like, shit. And I hear the other end of the line go like dead, like Pixar's dead silent. And then I'm like, I got to do something to fix this, So I jump in and I said, listen, I understand this book looks terrible. Clint was not put in the position to do his best work. is there a compromise here? Because the floppies don't sell it nearly as well as the trades. Like the trades are the thing that stay on the shelf for a long time. The floppies are just out in a month. Is there a way we can just make some minor fixes that, you guys need, whatever the most egregious problems are, we'll fix it, put this out as a floppy, and then I will have Clint completely redraw the book for the trade. So when we put the trade out, it's a much better version. Pixar accepted that. On the way home, I got a call from Disney, and they were like, hey, we want you to come up to Pixar. We want to have this meeting with you and the Pixar creative people because they want to pull the license from Boom. They absolutely hate Boom, but they like you. And so if you can come up here and you can work with them creatively and get some stuff, in the pipeline that's pre-approved, I think it'll go a long way to fixing the relationship. So I did. I went up and I went up to, but of course I couldn't go up alone because Ross, the CEO of Boom, and the managing editor who caused this problem had to go with me because it was prestigious to go to Pixar, right? So they had to, get in there and, and so they went up with me and they almost it was that their end was a disaster, but we worked everything out creatively. And then 2 weeks later, I think it was a week, 2 weeks later, Boom fired me. And after saving the business with Pixar. And then when they had to tell Pixar that they fired me, Pixar, one of the Pixar guys told me later, he goes, we just wrote back, well, obviously everyone here is quite unhappy with that decision. And then they pulled the license from Boom.
It just goes to show you many bad decisions comic book companies have over the years. It's one of these things where I don't know why they put certain people in charge the way they do. It's are they basically hiring a person out of college to run the business side of it with no comic experience? Wouldn't it make more sense to basically hire you to be the Batman editor or the X-Men editor or the Spider-Man editor, But they wouldn't see you as prestigious enough. You have to have that piece of paper from college to work in my editing position at DC or Marvel,
Well, that's how marketing people get hired. They have a degree and they come in or they work at the Apple store, which is what Boom's thing was, the guy at Boom would say oh, I did marketing for Apple. It's you worked at the Genius Bar, dude, calm down. That's what I heard. So, but people will come in with this marketing degree. Boom was weird because Boom had a bunch of people who had come from kind of jobs that were not within the sphere of the job that they were doing, but somehow they had this extreme arrogance about it. It was the most arrogant company I've worked for. I'd never seen sexism in the workplace until I worked at Boom. Because I'd worked for companies like Kaiser and Allstate and things like that. And actually, maybe I hadn't worked at Allstate yet. I don't remember exactly what order I worked at, but I'd worked at Kaiser and I'd worked at these, these companies, and where the women were treated as equal to the men, and you had female supervisors, and everything was fine. And then I got to Boom, and Mad Men was on the air, and all these guys in the office thought that Mad Men was the example of how you run an office. So our smartest editor was female. She was the most talented editor we had. And she was only an assistant editor because, she hadn't made her bones. And it was just and so when she finally got editor, I was you should have had this job all along. It's just absolutely ridiculous. I remember one of the other editors said something to her once. I can't remember what it was, but the whole bullpen went silent because what he said to her was so degrading and just diminished her contribution and her mental, her mental ability. And the whole office went quiet. And I said to him, you need to apologize to her right now, or you and I are going to go outside. That's how serious the situation is right now.
Yeah.
And he was like, and he obviously from an HR perspective, that's not the best thing for me to do, but that's sure. I was like, no, we will go outside and I will feed you your teeth because, that I'm not going to let that stand. And I heard recently that she's at another company now. So
how long ago was that at Boom Studios? You said this was before before Toy Story 3.
2009?
2009. And now Boom Studios, they've did, Keanu Reeves' book. They're bigger now for the Power Ranger stuff. They had their own Power Rangers continuity that they ended, but then they just basically wanted to do a whole new #1 kind of thing. So then they're like, oh, it's ending. That's just another fucking new #1 with the checks note, guys, a female red Power Ranger to start it off with, because check boxes, right? And then
well, the funny thing is that when I wanted to do Darkwing Duck at Boom, and I was fighting to do Darkwing Duck, and they were telling me no, the reason that I was given for not being able to do it was, oh, that sounds like a nostalgia play. We don't know that anybody's going to be interested in
As they literally
And
did
then-
Mighty Morphin Power Rangers.
Yeah, it was nostalgia that saved their company's ass more than once after I left.
It was crazy. They did Mighty Morphin Power Rangers in 2017 for like the original 6. And then they constantly kept doing Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. It was almost the Sabans, almost Go-Go. Like, all they did was Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, and the fans are like, can we get something different? Like, we like Mighty Morphin, but can we get something different? They gave you like 3 other books that were kind of different, but everything always circled back to Mighty Morphin. And now they're doing it again with this other new book that they're putting out. I bought it. I'll read it and review it eventually, but I hope they know what they're doing, because Power Ranger fans, I'll be honest, they're pretty laxed on most things. But if you lose them, that's sad, because they'll pretty much accept any bullshit you give them, honestly. You know?
Yeah. Well, I think the initial success of the Power Rangers book was largely due to the I believe it was the editor I was talking about. I believe I'll say her name, Daphne Plevin. I believe that she was responsible for the creative team on the original Power Rangers book that Boom did. I think that all that success was because of her and how much work she put in and the people that she hired.
I
have no problem saying this. Daphne, I don't know if you'll ever see this, but absolutely adore you. Think you are extremely talented. Nothing but
what's crazy about her is that she essentially is kept Power Rangers afloat, because Netflix, as with that Hasbro deal, they're not going to do anything with Power Rangers anymore, and so all Power Rangers basically has now is whatever title Boom puts out every month now at this point.
The other thing, like the hype is gone. Like it's all just just another another product that's out on the shelf.
The other thing I wanted to ask you is there's an other Boom CEO that ended up getting replaced. So like, for Boom Studios, do you think there's a way for them to like end up beating like an Image in publishing, or IDW or Dark Horse, or you think they're just kind of like in that B, C tier average?
No, I think in like the next 13 months or so, they'll just be absorbed into Penguin Random House and kind of like dissolve.
You're right, that did happen.
Yeah, it'll just be like an an imprint of Penguin Random House, and it'll be handled by people that are inside.
You don't think they have
Penguin.
much time along as being an independent?
No, I mean, if you're Penguin Random House, why would you keep paying for that office on Wilshire Boulevard? It's like that office in Wilshire. The reason that it was there was so that Ross could look like have an office on Wilshire and look like a big shot when he was trying to pitch movies.
No.
Yeah, Boom was the original. I mean, Boom was the kind of like the original company that was like making comics to try to make movies. A lot of the comics that they were doing when I was there were scripts that were floating around Hollywood that had never got produced as films. And so they were bringing them in and they were doing them as like cheap storyboards that then they could go into some executive's office and lay them all out. And that was another reason that they wanted the Pixar license, the Disney licenses, so that they, because Pixar never wanted comic books done, but Disney gave us the license and we were doing them. But so that Ross could go in, he could fan out a bunch of Pixar books and lie and say that Pixar handpicked Boom to, they'd never done comics before, but they handpicked Boom to do their comics. Everything, I mean, look, everything in Hollywood, everything in entertainment is smoke and mirrors and lies. And like, I had so many meetings where like, it would start out like, okay, how do we spin this to get this person to do what we want? And I'm like, how about we just go in and we just tell the truth? Can we just go in and we just tell the truth? Like, how do we go in and how do we lie to Don Rosa to get Don Rosa to do what we want? And I'm like, can we just be honest with Don Rosa and maybe like be the first publisher that tries to treat him well, so that, maybe with, when Don Rosa does an interview and he says, every publisher I've ever worked with, that's not Egmont has screwed me. Well, except for Boom, can we shoot for that? Can we just be honest with people? And that's how I maintained my relationship with Disney Publishing. And that's how we ended up on the book again at Joe Books, was because I wouldn't lie to Disney. I'd have to on the conference call with my superiors at Boom on the call, but I would always have like a later, debriefing with my Disney Publishing liaison. And I'll say, this is what's actually going on.
The other thing I'll ask you before we get into your own book, what was your last straw as far as like working with these people? Was like you get give an argument with someone like you had with Boom and the other times you worked, or you just went, you know what, I'm done. I'm sick of this bullshit they're trying to push on people.
Yeah, well, I mean, I got fired from Boom. They fired
me. What
year
was that?
Before I quit. That was 2010.
2010. Okay, so it was shortly after the Pixar situation. Okay.
Yeah, so it was like we had gotten, it was the Pixar situation had happened. Darkwing Duck had been greenlit a few months prior, and we were working on the book, and the sales had come back, and the number one issue was the best-selling thing that we had done. Go figure. The nostalgia play that I'd pushed for turned out to be the best thing. Because I'm actually in touch with the audience. I'm actually, one of the audience. I know what I'm doing. Any company that's ever just like gotten out of my way, I've made money for. So we have, the sales numbers come back because it was just supposed to be a 4-issue miniseries, Darkwing Duck. But like the numbers come back and they're so good. It's like, we want this to be an ongoing. And so they tell me to map out like the next like 2 years worth of stories. So I take my team to lunch and I'm like, we're going to do this. We're going to do this. We're going to do this. And we map it all out. And then like the next week is when they fired me. And it was funny because they fired me after I had come back the previous week. I'd had a day where I had to call out because I was having like intense stomach pains. And I went to the doctor. And they said, okay, well, we're going to schedule some tests for you. Best case scenario, you're probably working on an ulcer. But worst case scenario, you might have stomach cancer. So we want to take some blood, want to do blood tests and blah, blah, blah. So I'm waiting for the blood test. I go back in the next day to Boom and I tell them what's going on. And, and Ross himself, like, give me a big hug. Don't worry, buddy. We're going to get through this and blah, blah, blah. We're going to be there for you. And then they fire me.
They fired you when you almost potentially had cancer.
Yeah. Now, fortunately, I didn't end up having stomach cancer, but they fired me. Yeah. It's like, it's going to be a potential problem.
Terrible.
And what I found out later, what Ross told me himself was that he was promoting Matt to editor-in-chief, who, the managing editor who didn't like me, who had just come from Meltdown Comics and never had any other experience. He was promoting him. And because Matt didn't like him, Matt didn't like me and he and I would butt heads. He said, if you want me to run this office, I can't run it with Aaron Sparrow here. And so
the other thing that you said recently in a video with Wes is, so I know you can't say names because you said you couldn't, but you said you could go to cons and you could basically talk to some of the guys that still work in the mainstream, but you can't post pictures with them because, as we both know, that would be like, oh my God, you took a picture with that enemy. You must now lose your livelihood. Are these people famous that are still writing modern comic books? The people you can't post pictures
of? There's some people. I mean, there's some people that don't care and that have
their influence is like so big it doesn't matter if someone didn't like them though.
Yeah, but I mean, some of them could be harmed because, there are people that, that are more powerful than them. And so I'm always like really aware of that. I try to remain cognizant of that and not, but like I'll compliment people's work and even publicly, like I'll say like, I think this artist is great, or I think that this person's really knocking it out of the park. And, some of them will have the guts to respond, because they're like, well, you know what, you complimented me. I don't really see what the problem is with saying thank you. But there's others that just, they just can't because it's just too fraught with peril. There's still a lot of whisper networks. There's still a lot of people that are backstabbing in the industry and trying to protect this ever shrinking little ice flow in the middle of this vast sea. Yeah, and now they're all over on Blue Sky. And the biggest problem for me is that I've never the Marvel and DC that I dreamed of working for is long dead. It hasn't existed in a long time. And
you still buy titles like a pull list or anything like that? You buy trades or omnis?
Yeah, but I'm not really buying. I mean, the only DC book I'm really getting is Green Lantern, and
that's about Jeremy Adams.
Jeremy Adams, who I think is really good. I think he's a really good writer, and he actually said thank you. I ran into him at an event. It
sucks because people like him and Dan Mora. Dan Mora's art is fantastic. Man just gets they're just basically in a sea of shit, and they're like the golden nuggets in there.
Yeah, and actually, it's funny. Dan Mora was discovered by my friend Darren Bennett, who was, a letterer and was doing his own book called Quixote.
Maybe they should hire you for Image Comics instead of Boom Studios.
You can't though. You can't hire me because it's like, what am I going to do? I'm going to butt heads with Eric Larson. I'm going to butt heads with, it's all a click. And if anybody has any kind of like, the funny thing is when I was at Boom, I'm not going to say that I was easy to work with because I was not. I knew what I wanted to do. I had a vision for what I wanted to do. I also was younger and a lot more of a lot more piss and vinegar, I guess, as my dad would say.
I think the saying is like you were easy to set off. Is the saying right?
Yeah, like and I was a little bit, and so like I found out years later that I have a TBI, a traumatic brain injury from childhood, and so it made it hard for me to regulate my emotions.
Oh, okay.
And now that I know, and I can kind of see the signs, and I know how to regulate it, and so I don't have the I don't have like any like outbursts or anything. But it's funny, like I'm difficult to work with because I had outbursts when I was in my 30s, but Mark Waid is in his 60s and he has outbursts all the time, and it's fine, because he's politically aligned. He says the right things. But
damn those right things.
So it's like, no, I can't go work for any of these companies, and I don't know that I would want to be constrained by them anyway, because I don't want to work anywhere where the Whisper Network can start a campaign against.
And you would know this as well as I do. You know what's crazy? I'm pretty sure you maybe thought of this with Rob Liefeld. He's an example. I think I would never know, but I think he regrets creating Deadpool and X-Force for Marvel because he realizes that he could be getting all that money and all that fame for himself. Because as you probably know this, you create something for those guys, they think it's theirs. You should feel grateful you worked for us, prestigious Marvel and DC. Well, he created like things like Youngblood and a few other things, but let's be honest here, Youngblood has had many other people beside him. They can't make it work. He can't make it. He literally sold it because he knew he couldn't make it work. He also had Last Blood that came out last year. He was doing like on his Whatnot page. That didn't take off. I do genuinely think some of these guys that created some of those original characters hated they did it because Marvel and DC don't respect that you did it for them. You should be happy you created for them. It's like, I want to make the fucking character. What the hell?
But if you created Deadpool and you couldn't tie him to Wolverine and you couldn't tie him into the X-Men,
yeah, it's true.
Would Rob have been able to make Deadpool the success that he is without the Marvel Disney machine behind him?
Yeah.
That's always the question. So it's like, I created villains for, Darkwing Duck and, and like people are like, well, what if they make like a pin or a plush or that character's on a cartoon? Do you get anything? And I'm like, no. And they're like, well, why would you do that? And I was like, well, the things that I created for them were specifically for that property. I was never going to use those characters anywhere else. So, now, there are some ideas that we never got to in a second Darkwing that we almost did, which was based on the DuckTales 2017 show. There's some ideas there and some concepts and some villains that I've tinkered with, and they'll be in Kneel Before Doomface, the crowdfunded book that, my original property that I'm doing. They'll be in there. So, there are some things that translate over. But yeah, the stuff that like Disney actually owns, I was never going to do anything with it. And like, it's like James and I created the Juggernaut for that story. And then they told us we couldn't use the name Juggernaut because it was too close to Juggernaut. And I was like, Juggernaut's not a proper, like Juggernaut is a word, it's like Stan Lee didn't create the word Juggernaut. He used it because it's a word that exists. And by the way, it's a Marvel character and you own Marvel. So why can't we use it?
Good Lord, man.
And they were like, well, we could go to legal. Yeah, we could go to legal, but it's going to delay the book. And it was just
like recently, good old Tom Brevoort. Comics are selling better than ever. Yeah, taking credit for all of manga's sales. Yeah, good job. That's all they can do is take credit for other people's work. That's all they can do.
Hey, Dogman.
I wanted to ask you this, because you have your own independent comic book you're working on getting funded right now. It actually passes funding goal, which is good because, in this space, it's really hard to get people to even give money to somebody. So it's just, how did you get people interested in your work? Because that's the biggest problem is it's hard to get new comic book readers interested in a random person or even a person that's been in the industry like yourself interested in giving you money. How did you get that to happen?
It's interesting. And I'm really grateful to everybody who's backed the campaign and has talked about it and, is out there pushing it. Hopefully, we continue to climb because we're in our last 9 days of the campaign right now. I think that obviously being on Thinking Critical helps a lot. Being on YouTube helps a lot. Having people know you and kind of like liking the things that you talk about, or at least, liking your persona or thinking that, you're what you say about storytelling, it speaks to them. So when I came up with the idea for this and I started to put it all together, I was talking to Arron who at the time had just launched like Wraith of God. And, I think he had just fulfilled the first book when I was telling him what I wanted to do. And he said, well, when are you planning on doing it? And I said, well, we're at least like a year away. And he was like, you need to start talking about it right now. And so that was like some of the best advice that I got. So I started showing art. Instead of keeping it secret and keeping it all under wraps, I started showing some of the stuff. And so, we kind of built a little bit of hype, in our little tiny corner of the internet. We built some hype. Now I would love it if I woke up tomorrow and it was like 9,000 books sold, like Rippaverse. That would be good. That would be phenomenal.
Could you imagine that, making $100,000 off your first indie comic book? I know Joel Sontag. That guy got $50K for his Reaper Destroyer book. That's insane.
That book looked phenomenal.
Looks really good.
Like I know why that money, and I think that our book looks great. Like
your main character, your villain right there reminds me of, I don't know if you got this. It reminds me of Skeletor from He-Man.
Yeah, that was one of the inspirations when we designed the character. I sent a bunch of reference to Tim Lim, who designed Doomface, and then Renzo redesigned him, and kind of like brought him into his style. But when I had sent, the initial concept that came from Tim Lim, I sent him I said like Skeletor or Hordak or like Primeval from I think he drew on like Primeval from the Ghostbusters, the one that had the big gorilla. So like there was a lot of different influences. I really wanted all those 80s influences kind of in there. And because he does sort of look, there is a joke in the book where like a barista tells him, settle down, Skeletor. And he says to Lexi, why does everyone keep calling me that? Because of course he was banished before, Masters of the Universe was, ever reached his sphere of awareness. So we have a lot of fun with it, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, say. I'm pretty sure you didn't like Kevin Smith's animated Masters of the Universe series that came out a while ago. The one where I think He-Man dies in like the first episode and he replaces with a woman. Like, why would you ever think that's a good idea? Like, Kevin Smith's such a weirdo. I don't know how he was able to even make that happen.
You know what's funny is I was at a PowerCon and I was talking about the show and what I would have done differently. And what I like to have these conversations where it's like, okay, if you take what exists and what that which has decided the fan base. What is it about this that divided the fan base, and how could you fix that? How could you have mitigated that with the least amount of tweaks possible? And I was talking about that with somebody at one of the booths, and this guy rolls up and he's listening to me, and it turned out it was Ted Biaselli, the showrunner for the show. And now the nice thing was I wasn't being like an angry fanboy. I wasn't, I was just saying like, you just needed to do this and you need to do this. Like you could have basically told the same story by just altering some of the character motivations here and there. You could have killed He-Man off early on. You could have done all that. I get the shock value, I get going for that. Like, the whole thing about like, this is not your grandpa's He-Man, that kind of thing. I was like, you could have done all that. The main problem with the show is you made Teela a bitch. We're all inclined to like Teela because we're all coming in already liking Teela. So her motivation needed to be less selfish, less about herself, more about the way her father was treated when the king turns on him, and you understand the king's pain too, but people lash out when they're in pain and they do things that maybe they wouldn't otherwise do. So he lashes out at Man-at-Arms. She defends her father, but then she's also hurt that her father didn't tell her. I was like, you can make Teela sympathetic instead of making her a bitch, and you avoid the stupid side shaved haircut that everybody hates, and you avoid giving her a girlfriend, which I'm very certain that that's who Andra was supposed to be until Clownfish TV reported it. I think there was some backtracking there. I think some things were cut, but you avoid all of those modern day tropes that are pissing people off, and you just go with a character driven story where you still like all the characters. And I think it would have worked. I think it would have worked with very little tweaking. I liked the second season quite a bit, except for some dumb Kevin Smith jokes, just like some puns with like snout spout and stuff like that, like right at the beginning. And then at the end where they do some heavy handed, like, we're going to make Eternia a democracy instead of a monarchy, because you all deserve to have your agency, just like a lot of like modern deisms that like worked its way into that last episode. But other than that, like the action was good. And I liked the whole,
Masters of the Universe was the Cartoon Network one that came out in like 2004,
by Mike Young Productions. Yeah. That one's spectacular.
That one's great. Like, oh my goodness. It's crazy. Is for Masters of the Universe, they had that one movie for it, the live action one came out in like the 80s or whatever. They've been trying to get that live action movie off the ground, man, for years. They just recently casted Idris Elba as fucking hell, one of the
Man-at-Arms? Man-at-Arms, yeah.
Yeah, like, do you ever
he's in talks to do it.
Do you think they're ever going to do a live action Masters of the Universe movie? Because this movie's been bumped around studio to studio, production hell. There's no way it's coming out good after basically like almost 50 years of development.
They really want to, but I feel like it's like Blade now, where it's like the odds of it coming out like seem to get less and less every day, and it's so like right there. Like you're like, how can you not do this right? Like this is so easy to get right. Blade is easy to get right. Masters of the Universe is easy to get right, but Hollywood can't not get in its own way and step on its own dick like every single time right now. And I think it's because you've brought in a lot of people who are inherently untalented, or they have an agenda as opposed to having, ability.
You know what's crazy? That's why I think DEI is so bad, because people like us would have always said, why are they hiring this person based off their skin color or any of that shit? Because that doesn't matter. You should hire someone based off merit. But then now they make it apparent so they hire someone of different race and sex orientation. It's like, okay, you guys aren't beating the allegations, you know? Like, they're literally hiring untalented hacks on their projects.
We've got this person that's this talented, and then we've got this person that's this talented, but this person checks more DEI boxes, so let's hire them. And that, you know, it's like, that's, and I've always said every single team that I've put together on every single book has ended up being diverse. And that's not because I set out to check a bunch of boxes. That's just because I hired the best people for the job, and they happen to be, you know, this ethnicity or this, you know, sexuality or whatever, you know, that's just who they happen to be. But I hired the people that were the most passionate for the project and had the most talent. You know, you can't understate not only talent, but people's passion for when they come in. You know, if you've got somebody who is good and they're excited to do the thing,
yeah,
they're gonna knock it out of the park. They're gonna work hard. If you've got the people that are just like, well, you know, this is just a paycheck for me, and it's just so that I can get a Netflix deal or so I can get noticed here or there, you know, that's the commitment that you're gonna get. So I think that they've done a huge disservice to talented people, and now I think that, you know, when you have people who are from more diverse backgrounds, now there's always that asterisk with the people that they work with. Like, did they get hired because they're good, or did they get hired because of thus?
Do you know what I think it is? I was hard thinking about this at work. It's those guys in your friend group that always said this thing, and the line always went like this: where are the girls at? They literally are just trying to inject women in things that they're probably not even interested in, just to have a girl there because it's a sausage fest if it's only just guys. When in reality, it's like, you look back on that kind of saying, you get older, that's stupid. Like, if they're not interested in it, then they're just not interested. You can't force someone to be interested in comics or all this nerd stuff if they're not. Like, I'm not saying girls can't like it or they won't, but chances are there's just more guys into this than girls. That's just what it is, you know?
There's more, and you know, there's women that are more into certain jobs or certain, you know, genres, or, you know, like there's going to be, you know, when you do talk about like the romance novel genre, who is the primary, you know, the primary consumer of that? It's
my inner white girl is. Now I'll read the romance.
You're like, is this Fabio cover?
I really think it's because they generally want to push women. They're like, oh, we have women and it's diverse, and it's like, so you basically want women there to look like you're promoting women, but in reality, that's just surface level bullshit. Like you said, it's just virtue signaling nonsense. Like, why do they want someone there if they're genuinely not interested? I don't want girls here that are not genuinely interested. I don't want you having to feel like you have to be here because you're forced to, and then you don't want to. You know?
Well, it's like, and what are you interested in? Are you interested in the property? Are you interested in the comic book medium? Or are you interested in the clout of being involved with something that, you know, people recognize? You know, that's kind of like and that's a motivation that I think that, you know, male or female, you have to look at. If you're just here for the clout, or you're just here because you want to attach yourself to this thing because then that elevates you in some other way, I don't think you're the right person for the job. I think that you need to come in and you need to say, okay, what can I do with this that elevates this property and that pleases the customer? And, you know, if you do that, then you'll get your, you know, you'll get your accolades, you'll get your, you know, your cheers and your flowers, as they say, you know, all that will come, but you have to put in the work, and you have to be interested in satisfying the customer.
Yeah, because I think in the business world, as you know, it's a thing called nepotism, where like basically if there's a guy and his son wants the job, he'll probably get the son will probably get the job over the other person. But most
are we talking about Tony Khan now? Are you talking about AEW?
I thought it's regular life, you know. And it's one of those things where
I just have to take a shot at AEW anytime I can.
You're fine. It's one of those things where even with that, people call that out. People don't like that. People go, well, why did you hire your son who's less qualified than that guy? That should be the same way in Hollywood, but it doesn't work out that way. Like, do you think, I'll ask you this, do you genuinely think they hate white people now? It really feels like they literally just hate white people. That's their
I think there's certain people that do. You know, I'm sure of it. Just like there's certain people that, you know, that are racist. You know, it's like you can't get away from that. I think I've always just kind of come from the school of thought that, like, hating somebody for something so arbitrary is ridiculous. And then I always make the joke: if you want to hate someone, talk to them as an individual. They'll give you a reason.
Oh yeah, people will do that. Yeah.
You know, it's like you don't have to do it on arbitrary traits. You can you know, just talk to them long enough. They'll do something that'll piss you off. But you know, it's unfortunate because my stepdad always like drilled into us the true measure of you as a man, or the measure of you as a person is how you treat people who can do nothing for you. You know, they can't advance your career in any way. You're not trying to sleep with them. You know, just people that you run into in your everyday life, how you treat that person who has no potential to do anything for you, except, you know, this is just a random encounter. The way that you treat that person is the measure of your character. And that's always stuck with me. And I've always tried to, you know, it's like I'm a kid that like grew up in the 80s and the 90s, you know, and we didn't have all of this focus on race. Like we didn't even notice it. Like I talk about all the time. You'd ride your bike around the neighborhood and you'd run into a kid, and you know, it's like I grew up in a heavily Hispanic neighborhood, in kind of like this rural barrio. You know, so it was like mostly Hispanic kids, and you know, it's like they would call you white boy or whatever, and you know, you knew that they were Mexican, but like that didn't matter. It was like, do you like G.I. Joe? Hey, I like G.I. Joe. Are we best friends now? And, you know, and then you'd hang out and you'd play G.I. Joe. You'd go get your toys and you'd sit in the backyard and you'd have a good time. Or you'd go down to the riverbed and you'd look for crawdads, whether or not you knew what a crawdad was. You know, you'd spend an hour down there looking, you know, fishing around, going, did you find any crawdads? And then you'd have to admit to each other, I don't even really know what that is. I thought you knew.
That's why it's so crazy now to think that everything is turned the way it is, because you have people that'll say things like, man, black people and Asians and Mexicans were heavily underrepresented in movies and television. It's like, who told you this lie? That's just a lie. People that actually say those things like black people were never given opportunities in Hollywood. That's just a lie. It's literally just a flat out lie. If anyone told you that and you believe it, you're an idiot. Or your mom dropped you on the head the same way Goku was dropped on the head as a fucking kid. You're actually stupid. Like the thing that Jennifer Lawrence said, or a few years back, she was like, she even said this word for word. We were told that boys cannot identify with the female lead. Keep in mind, she didn't say she thought this. She said we were told this. Mm-hmm. It just proves these people are just walking NPCs. They don't even have clear thoughts of their own.
Yeah, I mean, and there's definitely a school of thought. There's definitely a school of thought where that happens, where you would get told, like, you know, you can't make this lead a black lead because it won't appeal to enough people. There's always been this idea that, like, people only identify, you know, and it comes from people that I think are idiots, or that people that, you know, are just, well, maybe idiots is too harsh. I think it comes from.
Oh no, you were right. They're fucking stupid.
Yeah,
no,
it comes from people who have not been exposed to enough other people, and they think of people from different ethnicities or different races or things like that as being different, you know, and they can't possibly identify with you know, with this person, or white people aren't going to go see a movie with a black lead, and you know, I'm pretty sure Blade did great. Pretty sure we all went and saw Blade. I'm pretty sure that you know, it's like we had movies like Meteor Man, you know, like even superhero movies, you know. I think Meteor Man was the first black superhero movie. And you know what? White people went and saw it. And it was fine. Nobody had it, you know, nobody thought too much of it. You know,
I'm pretty sure a lot of white people love Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, you know.
But even the Spawn movie, when they cast Michael Jai White, the stated reason that the executives gave the creative people as to why Terry Fitzgerald had to be white is because they didn't want it to be perceived as a black movie, because they thought that it would make less money. And that's coming from the top. So, you know, you've got the people at the top, you've got these executives that think these things, and then they're passing it down to the lower level. And the lower level, instead of, like, you know, kind of going, well, that's not true, they just start to parrot it, you know. But then when it comes time to virtue signal, then they're like, well, we were told this. And it's like, okay, well,
they just gave the game away. You just told everything the fans have been saying. You were told to say this. That means you don't believe it yourself, but they'll never actually come forward.
Or you never looked at it critically or pushed back on it. You just accepted it and, you know, and went forward with it.
Remember when James Gunn was on Michael Rosenbaum's podcast, and he was talking about the sales, the comic book sales, and he caught himself midway. I'm pretty sure you remember when he caught himself. He said, superhero movies have bad, like, third acts, and a lot of them do, even though they're somewhat good movies, right? But he's talking about comic books after that, and he went, well, comic books don't sell. He stopped himself because he didn't want to give the actual reasons why they didn't sell, because he knew if he did, he'd lose his position. He can't say that comic books don't sell anymore because of, like, racial things, or like they race up the character, or gender swaps. Even people like James Gunn, is the highest position he is. He's basically Kevin Feige now at DC. Even he can't say what he really thinks, because he'll probably lose his job. That's insane. He
No,
literally almost
he's a guy
basically
that's been canceled once already, so he knows what it looks
You're
like.
right.
Obviously,
Yeah.
there's something very different, but
Mhm.
you know, he knows what that looks like, and he knows the culture that he
Mhm.
works within, and he knows the
Mhm.
type of people that he works with, and they're all afraid of each other because they're all ready to, you know, like anybody in those industries, and even in something as small as comics, so something as inconsequential, and for as little money as you make,
Yeah.
people will pull out the long knives and backstab each other to get ahead. You know, it happened to
Mhm.
Rick Remender with Kelly Thompson. You know, that's how her whole career is based upon, you know, stabbing. You
Kelly
know, Rick Remender in
Thompson.
the back.
I wouldn't know, man. She blocked me.
Well, of course she did.
I bought Absolute Wonder Woman, and I bought the trade paperback for Scarlet. I bought the first few issues, but I didn't have time to read them, review them, so I was gonna get it in trade. I was like, Scott Snyder tagged her, and I was like, oh, let me look at her and see what she's gonna have planned coming up. Just I never really looked at her profile. I was blocked. It's like this ugly fat bitch block it. What the hell? Oh, she's good lord, man. These people are just insane. Like Tim Sheridan, who's like, you guys have to support this book. We have to prove to the publishers that there's money with LGBTQ stories. So he just gave the game away. There is no money there. Why are we doing this? These people just always give the game away. It's funny. I love it.
It's funny because it's like there is an audience, but it's not a large audience. It's, you know, much like it's not a large population within the larger population.
Yeah.
And then you come down to comic books. So now, so the LGBT community is this small percentage of the regular, you know, the regular community, the regular population. And then from there, you have to cut it up even finer. Now you have to find the ones that are interested in comic books. So now that's an even smaller pie. And then you've got the ones that are interested. Then you have to find the LGBT people interested in comic books who are interested in Tim Sheridan's writing. So that's an even smaller piece of the pie.
Yeah.
So you keep carving it up finer and finer, and then you put out this thing and you say, like, we have to prove this, and you've basically set yourself up for failure. It's like when they pushed back against the Hogwarts game. That boycott was never going to work. And I said from the beginning, all you're going to do by trying to organize this boycott is show how little actual cultural power you have.
Remember the website they created to figure out who would literally trying to dox people in real time, figure out who bought it so they could put you on this transphobe list. It's like, and you people want to say you're not mentally deranged and you're not in a cult. Like, you tell them that light switch is never flicking up. That light switch is always off.
Some people just want to play a game where they're wizards. You know, that's what it all boiled down to. And so many people are fans of the Harry Potter franchise and have no idea about any of the issues with, J.K. Rowling. You know, normal people don't pay attention to this. They're too busy living their lives. The fact of the matter is, there's not that many people out there that are actually trying to oppress you. Most people are too busy. I don't know if this will make you feel better or make you feel worse, but most people don't give a crap about you at all. They don't have time. They don't care enough to oppress you. They don't care enough to get in your way. They don't have time. They're dealing with their own shit.
Yeah. I'll give you one even further. Average people on the street just walking past you. Literally, if you were fist fighting somebody, there's people that just walk past you. Average everyday people could give a fuck less. That's just some hard pills to swallow. Like, average people will see a dog dead on the street and just pass it by because it has nothing to do with them. Like, guys, people literally do not care if you give them the absolute reason not to care. You know? So I find it crazy that people are like, oh my God, there's such an uproar over her tweets. People could give a fuck less about tweets, even let alone real life stuff they walk past through every day. Like, what's wrong with these people?
I think this election pretty much proved that nobody gives a crap what celebrities think about anything. You know, whether it's J.K. Rowling and what she thinks about trans people, or whether it's Mark Hamill and what he thinks about Trump, nobody cares. Nobody's coming to you for that. You know what people are coming to you for? Like, this goes for me too. I don't think anybody gives a crap what I think about, you know, politics. The only time anybody cares what you think about politics is if they want to cancel you for thinking differently than them, or they just want to be happy that you're on their side. Otherwise, nobody cares. You know, and I think it's and I don't think, like I used to say, like I've gotten a little more political as things have gotten crazier, but it mostly has to do with cancel culture and the fact that I don't think that people should be getting, you know, losing their jobs for who they vote for, and that goes for both sides. But you know, I always used to say, like, people would say, like, well, how come you're not talking about this? And I'd be like, I don't think people come to me for that. Like, nobody goes like, well, what's going on in the media right now? Oh my gosh, there's a bill that, you know, about thus and so. I wonder what the jackass that writes Darkwing Duck thinks about this. I'd better go to his Twitter right now and find out. Like, you don't change anybody's mind. Like, what I think doesn't matter. Like, you have your mind made up.
Oh shit! Yeah, but that's the problem too. That's what I hate when a lot of people on like the right and center people say, "Look, man, Eminem, he endorsed Kamala Harris." Guys, I never once in my life went to Eminem for politic advice. Can he rap? Does he make good music? Cool. It's all I care for. He talk about politics. I ain't listening. I literally just will not listen. I don't even care what he says. It means nothing to me. Like, why would I listen to some low IQ idiot that talks about the hood? What the hell, about politic advice? People.
Ricky Gervais pulled the curtain back, man. He pulled the curtain back and was like, "Why would you listen to these people? They don't live the same kinds of lives you do. They have no idea, they have no idea what your life is like. They don't know what it's like to be regular people, and a lot of them are pedophiles. So, why are you going to take a lecture from them on, on what morality is?"
All right. Last few things I'll ask you before you have to head out because I got to get to another one-on-one. First thing is, do you have anything plans at the end of 2024 going into 2025 you want to let the audience know about?
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna be working on finishing up Kneel Before Doomface and getting that out to backers in early 2025. I'm already hard at work on the next book. The next book how it'll shake out depends on how well this first one does. Because if we hit 22,000, we're gonna add 24 pages that are already written. Renzo's already done some of the art for it, but that'll basically almost double the size of the book at this point. So if that doesn't happen, if we don't hit 22,000 and we don't add those 24 pages, then those 24 pages will go to be the next, the next book. But
I thought it was supposed to wait 4 years for a book. I thought that was the thing. You wait 4 years for quality.
No, we're going to upset the game. We're going to deliver quality with a quick turnaround, because what I want to do is I want to get to the model of like an Iconic Comics or a Rippaverse where the book is done before we solicit it.
Yeah,
and then,
makes sense.
And then when that takes money. So it just depends on how much we make and how much we're able to bank and put towards the next project. So everything. I'm not making anything on this. I've already spent a bunch of money out of my pocket to pay for all the stuff that's been done so far. Any profit that we get, I want to give bonuses to my creative team. I'll be the last person in line to get anything.
Oh, usually works. Yeah.
I just want to put this out there. I want to do something that entertains, and I want to build something, and I want to employ Renzo and Oscar forever. For as long as they want to keep doing stories about Doomface, I want to keep doing it with them. So
yes,
that's what my 2025 looks like.
Yeah, it's crazy you said that. Even someone like you with experience, they just won't listen to. People understand the Marvel and DC you know and love did that exact thing, that when you bought the comics and you loved them, they put them out on time and they were quality. I don't understand where this logic comes from, where if you wait longer for a book, it'll magically be better than if you were to get it on time and it's a quality book. People are legitimately so fucking retarded. I have to make sure my brain is separated from reality when I talk to these people. But good Lord, man. What rotted people's brains? TikTok rotted these people's brains. They can't even look at a page. I don't think these guys even read the books. I know they don't. You talk.
No. A lot of people are just buying them for whatever reason. I got the cover, or I did it. And it's great. It's great that if you want to support somebody and you're like, I don't really have time to read the book, or I'm not super interested in it, but I want to support them, so this is a way that I can do it. I mean, that's all well and good, but I think, for me, for a lot of people that are really passionate about this, I want you to read this book. I want you to get invested in the characters. I want you to, read about Doomface and read about Lexi and read about Notorious K.I.D. and Iggy the Inflatable Iguana and all these characters that we're putting into this book and all the places that we're going to go and all the things that we're going to make fun of. And, I want you guys to get into it. That's why I'm passionate about the book.
The last thing I'll ask you is, do you have any shout outs you want to give to anyone in particular, and any other closing thoughts or statements before we end the show?
Yeah, I just want to give a shout out to my creative team, Renzo Rodriguez, Oscar Carreno, for Murphy for running the campaign. I want to thank Dolan, aka Drew from Thinking Critical. I want to thank Wes from Thinking Critical. For everybody everybody who's supported the book, everybody who's backed it, all of you guys who are taking a look at it. I really appreciate you. I'm one of those comic creators that I'm one of you. I'm a comic fan as well, so I understand what it's like to be passionate about these things, and I appreciate everything that you do for us.
And the last thing is, you have no more passion for Star Wars. I'm pretty sure you made that clear. I don't give a fuck. These people, you said, what was the thing you said? It could all burn to the ground and you wouldn't give a fuck at all anymore.
No, I don't care. I don't care. Like, I think the best thing that they could do is stop. That would make me the happiest. Just stop making Star Wars.
Oh God.
You're just tainting its legacy at this point.
Yeah, it's crazy how well we've been saying these things as fans. Recent articles have been coming out confirming everything we've been saying. They have no plan for the future. No shit. I could have told you that for 8 years ago. Go figure. But you were a racist and a misogynist if you said that back then. But it's okay if you say it. It's like, I hate people that work for Hollywood or these media outlets that suck off Hollywood so bad.
Here's the thing. If you actually care about diversity, if you actually care about promoting these voices and promoting these actors and you know, having these people's authentic stories on screen, if you actually care about that, give them quality projects. Don't give them hand-me-downs. Build quality projects around them. You know, it's really easy to say like, oh, aren't we progressive because we put a we put a black lead in Star Wars? That's not progressive. Why don't you put a black lead in a black project and tell that story instead of just trying to stitch them in where you can, giving them, you know, some handouts, giving them some leftovers, you know, race swapping some characters and putting them in that space. Why don't you actually build something that's theirs? You know, a character like a Blade. Or, you know, we could have like a Black Lightning movie. Now he's had a couple of shows and things like that, but, you know, like build around that character. There's characters that have endured. You know, I would have loved to have seen a Rhodey movie if they hadn't cast Don Cheadle. I don't have any interest in Don Cheadle as Rhodey, but I would have loved a Rhodey movie if it was an actor that I liked. You know, if instead of being Heimdall, if Idris Elba had been Rhodey, I'd be like, take my money.
Yeah, sadly, we were not gifted that Terrence Howard War Machine with RDJ. Because, you know, reasons happen. But, yo, man, it was great to have you on for the first time. Can't wait to have you on for a second time after, you know, you get the book fulfilled and we talk about that process, everything. And there's other stuff we didn't get a chance to even get to because, you know, there's only so much time in the work, you know, only so much time. And my wife is calling. I don't have a wife. Guys, I just have my pillow, honestly. And my bed.
Well, dude, I had a great time. You know, I'll come back on anytime.
Anytime, man. So thank you guys for checking out this episode